Hey, it's Jake Newton back for another video. And as part of our global security insights, in this one, I'm going to be talking about the issue of travel risk management. I love talking about travel risk management. It's a passion set of mine. But, when we talk about global security insights, it's all about talking about best practices. What's the best way to do things? What's the future looking like in this area when we talk about keeping our people safe or empowering ourselves to have that mental permission slip to do what we need to do relating to our personal safety and security. So travel risk management is this week's topic. And one of the biggest things that we like to talk about for travel risk management, arguably one of the biggest aspects that you can do to maximize the ROI in your travel program, has to do with training your people. Training your people and training for individuals to increase skill sets and awareness and understanding of different things creates ROI in many things, not just travel, but travel for this issue with the education and training aspect of it happens to be one of the bigger gaps that we see. And so it's kind of interesting. It's one of the bigger gaps we see in programs, understanding within businesses and organizations, time is money. And it can be hard to be having an organization commit to that purchase, setting aside time for someone to be able to get trained up on the things that we're asking them to do and the things that they need to do to protect themselves on their trip. But training is absolutely critical as part of a travel risk management program. It couldn't be more important. So how do we do training? If training is so important, how do we do it and do so effectively? Well, training for travel risk management should be prioritized based upon the risk. There's kind of three different levels. When we talk about folks going around the world, and from the perspective of the center, there's kind of three different layers to this. We've got awareness level training. We want everybody to have a foundational understanding of the program that they're traveling within, the resources that are available to them should something happen, whether that is an assistance provider, whether that's an insurance policy, whether that is resources the company provides for maintaining communications, or travel management companies that are supporting your company, even contact information maybe for the credit cards. There's a whole slew of things that we want our people to be aware of, in addition to those things that relate to safety and security. But even in that aspect, well, what are some baseline things such as situational awareness? How do they apply that when they go to a new location? When they're traveling, when they're representing your brand in a different area of the world, what does that look like? Are there things that you're expecting them to do or not do? How do they protect your information? What if somebody is following them? Do they understand how to maintain their individual safety and security? What about basic things? They lose luggage, they lose travel documentation. Are they registering with their embassy? And here in the United States, of course, that's with the STEP program for the U.S. State Department, the Safe Traveler Enrollment Program. Everybody should be doing that. These are the kinds of base level things that we want everybody that has a travel responsibility to be doing within the organization. So, okay, that leaves us with two layers. So what's that next layer up? The next layer up is starting to address more of those locational specific issues. It's starting to more address the risk of the specific areas they might be traveling to. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And then that third level up is the most extreme things. If somebody is going to a high-risk location, or if somebody is a high-risk traveler based upon the nature of their job or the nature of exposure that they have for the company, think like an executive, we want them to have what we call high-risk travel training, where they actually get experience with working through problem sets that they could experience. Perhaps that's kidnapping. Perhaps that's being detained by a foreign government. Perhaps that's somebody asking them questions that they don't want to answer based upon information that they know that the public should not know because you have intellectual property or whatever that is. And for all intents and purposes, that highest level of training is stress inoculation training. So we want to put people through that so they have an opportunity to practice these different things and get a high learning outcome before they potentially experience these issues in real life. Well, what does that look like? Maybe you're a hotelier. You're going to a location around the world where you're trying to put in a new property and that happens to be in a higher risk environment where there's greater risk for kidnapping or there's greater risk for crime, whatever that might be. So what does that look like? How do we build in these skill sets that we need to have an understanding at a higher level? Well, we get practice with it. We actually do it rather than just receiving some of that awareness level presentation, say, which can occur by an e-learning course or a video or maybe a briefing or something like that. So that's kind of the high risk level, and we've got the awareness level, but what about in between? Well, we kind of bridge that gap between the two. I actually just did this recently for an organization where they had a traveler going overseas. It was one of their first times going overseas. And so they wanted to have a specific briefing for that person so they could have an understanding of what are they up against, specific to their area. So I walked them through, here's some issues with the crime. Here's the laws that you need to be aware of in this particular country. As an example, the country does not allow chewing gum into the country. That's a pretty good thing to know before you actually step foot there, because you don't want to get yourself into hot water unintentionally. So we walked through all of that information. In the Air Force, when I served there, we called it an HRI brief, a high risk of isolation brief. Or when you would get into theater, you would get an in-theater brief. Or here in the States, when you would go to a new location before you start flying in your aircraft, you would get a site awareness brief. It was a site familiarization brief where we would talk about all of the risks specific to that area that you would be up against. So it's a greater awareness. So it's not necessarily at that high risk level, but it's a greater awareness specific to that location that the individual will be traveling. So it could be before they leave. It could be based upon that destination they're going to. Maybe there's specific materials we can provide them to help them in that journey, whether it's based upon your travel assistance provider or your travel security provider, getting that intel brief and walking them through that, or based upon lessons learned from other travelers going to that same location, providing them with that information. Tailor it to your culture, tailor it to your organization. But holistically, there's these three levels that you want to make sure that you're addressing from a training perspective. But training as a whole for travel risk management is absolutely pivotal. And if you are missing this gap, well, ultimately what it's doing is creating potential exposure for your travelers, because they're the ones out there experiencing the risk. They're the ones out there trying to create ROI for your business or ROI for the organization in terms of what their purpose is out there for, making sales or research and development or just general business meetings, checking in on sites, whatever that might be. Well, protecting that trip is important because the business is sending that person there. So having the traveler be an advocate in that process and understanding where they fall within the spectrum couldn't be more important. So that's where the training piece comes in. It is a big investment, but it will pay dividends. I'm highly confident in that. And so if you have questions on the travel aspect, how do you build a travel program, reach out to us. But in terms of having a mature travel risk management program, you can't do it without having training built in. So that's all for now. If you have questions, reach out to us, cpps.com. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to our newsletter. It pop right up for you at the website. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Until next time.